G'day everyone and welcome to the Eternal Gathering podcast, episode 3. This is the Gathering here, and today we're going to be talking about the BNR announcement that happened on the 17th of December 2019, and we're also going to have a quick chat about the Pioneer ban and restricted announcement that happened on December 2nd, because I haven't had a chance to really speak about that. As I was away for the weekend playing at the magicfest and getting prepared for that, so I didn't have a podcast come out that week. So just quickly going over that announcement, there was 3 cards that were banned in Pioneer on December 2nd. They were Once Upon a Time, Field of the Dead, and Smuggler's Copter. Again, Once Upon a Time, very strong card in terms of having really high consistency with the decks that ran it. All the green creature-based decks were basically playing Once Upon a Time. And just as I kind of predicted, it was homogenizing the format. Every green deck had to play Once Upon a Time. So that is a reason why it left. Field of the Dead, basically the same story as in Standard. It was just very difficult to control in the Pioneer format. There wasn't a lot of answers to it, and it just became problematic yet again in the Pioneer format. So they got rid of the Field of the Dead, so that the banned Field of the Dead decks that were playing that card no longer exist today. And finally, Smuggler's Copter was banned, another card that was homogenizing the format, probably the best 2-drop for aggressive decks, able to loot, very strong. There were some answers to Smuggler's Copter, but again, they felt that every deck was basically running it, and they wanted to move away from that and diverse the metagame. So those were the cards that were banned in the December 2nd Pioneer ban restricted announcement. And now moving forward to today's ban restricted announcement, there was no bannings in any of the formats apart from Pioneer. So there was no changes to Modern, Legacy, Standard, Vintage, or Brawl, or Pauper. None of those. But today we did get a banning in Pioneer. And today's bannings were Oko, Thief of Crowns, being banned in the format. Again, due to its dominance within the format, being again part of the top deck in the meta, the Simic Ramp decks, or the blue-green Stompy decks as well, just being very, very difficult to fight against, and also had a 60% win record against all other decks in the format. So they decided, yes, again, Oko was too strong for the Pioneer format and is banned from today forward. And the other card that got banned, which was also another card that had a very favorable matchup against all other decks, was the card Nexus of Fate from the Simic Nexus deck. So that card proved to be problematic in terms of the long gameplays that it brought with the reshuffling of decks and having extra turns and kind of dwindling until they got a win. A way to be able to find their win condition. So those 2 cards have been banned in Pioneer, and I think they're both reasonable bannings. I really thought Oko was going to be banned a couple weeks ago, but yes, he's finally banned in Pioneer. He's only now really in Modern and Legacy and Vintage. So those are the only formats he's now in, and I'm not sure if he'll be able to survive in those formats either, seeing that he is also quite dominant, especially in Modern, with the Urza decks, or Wurza decks, whatever you like to call them. But yes, it makes sense to ban him in Pioneer, as he's already banned in Standard, and Pioneer really isn't at the level of Modern in terms of its answers, and having Oko in the format will just making it really difficult to get those answers, and probably would have warped the metagame into having main boards possibly in terms of answers for Oko Thief of Crowns. And then obviously Nexus of Fate, another card that just really doesn't allow for really fun games, and I can see why they took Nexus of Fate away from Pioneer, a card that was also banned in Standard in its time. So yes, that makes sense, and I'm happy with the ban list that came out today. There are still some cards that I would consider on the watch list. Now, the next banning and restricted announcement for Pioneer, and I think for all the other formats, I think they said from now on Pioneer will be put into the normal ban and restricted announcements, and they're going to be starting to reduce the amount of times that they're going to do the ban and restricted announcements as well. So what's going to happen now is they're going to try and limit them, as there's a lot of tournament play being happening in the new year, and they want to make it that the meta doesn't shift too much in between seasons. So they'll just probably do the one banning before a season starts, or at the end of a season, just so that they can make sure that people that are making and building decks don't have their deck banned a week or two before a big tournament. So we'll go over to the staples of Pioneer, as I want to have a look at what cards are being played and what cards to kind of look for in terms of potentials of getting banned or becoming problematic within the format. And we'll go through the list. We've got Thoughtseize at number 1, which is a card that is not going to be banned at all. So that's pretty safe. Fatal Push at number 2, which is also the same. So here we go, and we can see where the Simic ramp decks were very dominant. We've got at number 3, Gilded Goose, number 4, Oko, Thief of Crowns, being one of the top cards in the meta. And obviously, with Oko being banned, I will see now that these Simic food ramp tanks will start to dwindle in numbers. So Gilded Goose will also drop from that. At number 5 and 6, we have Llanowar Elves Elvish Mystic, which are fine cards. Lovestruck Beast at number 7. Also a fine card, no issues there. That is in the he was in the blue-green Stompy decks. Opt at number 8, again not an issue. Mystical Dispute, a very strong card, but I like this card. I think it's not too bad of a card. It's very good for the mirror matches. Otherwise, it's a 3 mana counter spell, so it's pretty fair in that regards. It's just a really good card in the mirror matches. And then number 10 was Wicked Wolf, another card from the Simic food decks that will quite obviously drop in its percentage in terms of the meta. If we go down a bit more, we've got cards here that are more of a determination of what's happening in the meta game. We've got Scavenging Ooze, Duress, Aether Gust, Teferi, Time Reveler, Wild Slash, Negate, Bone Crusher Giant, Noxious Grasp, and Murderous Rider, and Dig Through Time rounding out the top 20 cards. And these cards are all cards that, apart from, like I said, I don't know about Teferi, but apart from Teferi, these cards are all fine and work well within the format. Dig Through Time is quite a strong card, but it hasn't really been as problematic as I first envisioned, along with Treasure Cruise. Is that Phoenix decks have kind of gone down a bit in terms of the percentage of the meta that they hold. I still think that they're very strong decks, and I would probably be thinking that in the future, whilst more cards are getting created and brought into the format, could become much stronger deck and might become problematic. But at the moment, it seems like I was wrong in terms of it being a problematic deck and having to have some bannings associated with it. And it turns out it's just a good deck within the format. It seems like still black and green are very strong within Pioneer. So choosing those colors is probably your best bet in terms of building a strong deck. Red also is quite strong in terms of the aggressive decks being inside the format and a part of the format. I myself have been playing a mono red deck and been doing very well with it. So yeah, it seems like the meta, apart from the Simic food and ramp decks, seems to be okay. Seems to be relatively diverse, and seems also to be quite even throughout. So moving forward, yeah, I don't see any massive problematic cards as of yet. Probably again touching on Teferi, the Time Reveler as a potential if blue white control becomes an issue or the Super Friends decks becomes an issue. But really we've got Dreadless Dredge, Mono Black Aggro, Zombies, and Human Weenies and Vampires being some of the more stronger decks within the format. So it seems like, yeah, Pioneer has been in a good place. Maybe Civic Ramp, yeah, was a bit too strong. And we're not going to see that anymore moving forward. So Pioneer seems to be in a good spot. I'm going to also have a bit of a chat about Modern. I feel like I've been playing a lot of Modern recently and feel like it's in a really good spot at the moment. There isn't really one deck that's dominating that I've seen. I've seen a lot of diversity at the GP at Brisbane, and it seems like you can still win with a multitude of decks. The Wurza decks haven't been as dominant as they were probably a month or so ago. And I feel like there are ways to kind of manage the Wurza decks within the Modern. Ochre can be annoying to play against. I haven't played against it enough to kind of warrant my opinion as to whether or not it should be banned in Modern in the future, but it is a card that probably people are looking at, and probably Wizards is also looking at in terms of how it performs. But yeah, Modern's in a really good spot right now, and yeah, really liking Modern and Pioneer at the moment. I'm trying to get to more Pioneer tournaments over the next couple of weeks. There's a few happening around Sydney over the holiday period, so I'll be trying to do some more gameplay footage so I can start rolling out those deck techs for you and gameplays. Anyways, so with that being said, I have a bit of a chat about the GP or Magic Fest that happened over the last week at Brisbane. It was relatively well run. Channel Fireball do a good job at running the event. But there has been a couple of issues recently that I overheard, and I kind of agree with as well, is the increase in the amount of tickets that you require to win prizes. Remember only, I think a year ago, the prices for the prizes in terms of the ticks required were half of what they were last week, with 10 ticks giving you a standard booster, whereas now it's 20 ticks for a standard booster. So I find that to be a little disheartening, especially for people that, are playing and they're not doing as well. Maybe it's their first time at Magic Fest, or they're just kind of getting into a format and they really want to, try it out and go to this Magic Fest and have a bit of fun and only win maybe 1 or 2 matches throughout the weekend. And then after all that, they're only able to get, a couple of boosters, which is a bit disheartening. Didn't happen to me, but I could imagine it being disheartening for players coming to the Magic Fest and trying out to get those tickets and not doing as well as they anticipated. So yeah, having those ticks kind of increased kind of hurts a little bit in terms of, you're paying all this money. It's the same price, mate, to enter the tournaments. Now you're getting less of a prize payout. So I'm not sure what's happened between last year and this year. Of course, they've monopolized the Magic Fest itself. They can dictate, what they would like to have as prizes and what those costs of those prizes are and the cost of entering tournaments, etc. But I mean, you want to also keep your fan base happy, and having an increase in the amount of tickets needed for prizes, I feel, is a step in the wrong direction. So hopefully they can kind of rectify that. I think maybe changing the prize structure at Magic Fest might be an idea. I feel like, I was playing modern events throughout the weekend, and 1 win would get you 20 ticks, 2 wins will get you 200 ticks, and 3 wins will get you 400 ticks. 0 wins will get you 0 ticks. I feel like maybe they can try and structure that a bit better. In the past, I believe, if you went completely lost every match, you get 1 booster as your prize, and then you would obviously scale up in terms of your wins, in terms of what prizes you got. I think that's a better way of having prizes for the GP. Maybe having that, 1 booster worth, so 20 ticks or 10 ticks, whatever it might be, for just participating in the event, because the event does cost, quite a bit. It was $30 for a constructed format, if you wanted to join in a competition or a tournament in the side events. So $30 and getting nothing out of it is a pretty bad deal. Also, even if you were paying $30 and getting only 1 booster, that's also a pretty bad deal. But at least you get away with, if we go away with getting something out of it. Also, I think 1 win, increasing it from just 1 booster, might also be a good move going forward. I feel like even getting one win, you're versing people that do have some strong decks. It is a competitive kind of uh, tournament, but at the same time, it's supposed to be a celebration of Magic. We're not playing in the main event. We're not playing in the PPTQ. We should be having a bit more of a fun and engaging experience for everyone. And I feel like if we're able to make people a bit more happy, a bit more secure in terms of, if I go in this tournament and I just go completely crap at this in this tournament and lose every single match and I get nothing, do I want to play the next tournament, the next side of it? I don't think so. I think I would rather save my money and just go and buy some stuff from the vendors instead, or maybe I'm done for the day. I'm not going to come back because I've already spent X amount of dollars and I haven't got anything out of it. So maybe giving them a little bit more will allow people to come back and enjoy the experience of Magic Fest. So that's kind of my thinking behind the price structure at Channel 5 or with the Magic Fests. I think that they did offer quite a lot of ways to play Magic. You had your Legacy, you had your Modern, you had Standard, you had Sealed, you had Drafts. The Mystery Booster Drafts were very, very popular. You had your Two-Headed Giants. They had Team Trios, I believe, during one of the days over the weekend. Commander was always on offer. There was a lot of on-demand events. So that was really good to see, that you could play Magic in any way you really wanted. The only one that was really missing from the schedule was Vintage. I don't believe there was any Vintage events at Magic Fest Brisbane. I don't play Vintage, but I'm sure having one Vintage event during the weekend probably would have been enough to kind of satisfy the audience, the Vintage crowd. So maybe there is enough Vintage players. I don't know, but that was something that was noticeable. And I did hear a few people, especially some of the Legacy players, kind of say that there weren't any Vintage tournaments throughout the weekend, so they were playing Legacy instead. So yeah, that was the only kind of negative feedback I would have. But overall, in terms of what was offered at the GP, it was very good. There was a command zone. I didn't get to play Commander myself during GP, as I was busy playing either Pioneer or Modern, or in the main event in the PPTQ is what I played. So having a dedicated area seemed like there was a few people in there. It wasn't completely packed full of Commander players, but there were, out of probably, I don't know, 20 tables, probably half of them were full at any given time. The price for entering the command zone was a bit hefty. I mean, if you wanted to play in a command zone, and it was kind of like a commitment really, because you'd pay, I think it was like $50 or something like that just to play Commander. You didn't really get any prizes per se. You got like 50 ticks, I think. That's it basically for entering, and you got the Soul Ring promo that they had. So it wasn't much of an incentive to kind of go into Command Zone, unless you really loved Commander, you just wanted to play Commander against a multitude of people or with your mates, which is great to see. I feel like the on-demand Commander events probably were the way to go, and that's what a lot of people I was talking to kind of did, and they went into, because there was a better price structure in that regards. But yeah, overall, like I said, it seemed to be really, really diverse in what they offered. The prices for the tournaments also a little bit hefty. Um, they have like the Fnatic packages, which seem to be good value if that's something that you were interested in. But if you were like me and you paid for each tournament that you entered, it is a bit hefty. You know, I did spend about $200 over the weekend going to tournaments. Thankfully, I did well and was able to get a kind of value for what I paid in terms of prizes I got. Um, but you know, if like again, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, if I didn't do really well and I paid that much money, I would not be very happy. I would be very sour about my experience of the weekend. Um, so thankfully that wasn't the case for me, but I'm sure a lot of other people weren't as fortunate as I was in their matches and didn't receive the rewards that I benefited over the weekend. Overall, in terms of players and numbers, I would say it's come down from what it was 2 years ago at the Magic Fest. Um, you know, there were 30 to 40 people per side events tournament, especially in Modern Pioneer when I was playing, and a few of sealed matches as well. Um, Probably a couple of years ago, there was more like 50 to 60 players. So probably just under half, or just under half, have kind of uh, gone away since a couple of years ago, um, which is a bit weird to kind of tell you the truth, because if we have a new game arena kind of bringing in the players that they say is happening, then where are they? Where are these multitude of players that are new to the game? Is Magic Fest something they're not aware about? Is something that is a bit confronting for new players coming into a tournament like uh, arena where you have to have the proper rules, proper cards, um, you know, having to know all the interactions and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it wasn't the case in terms of that. I think the judges did a really good job. It was kind of, you know, not too strict in terms of the side events. There was a bit of, you know, if you made a mistake, you can kind of go back. If you talk to your opponent, the opponent wasn't really, you know, trying to go by letter of the game and rule of the game. They were happy to kind of go back a bit and fix some things up. And I was the same. I was happy if people made a mistake. You know what? That's a silly mistake. Why don't you just go back, start again? Um, and I was happy with that being the case. And then calling the judge whenever, you know, there was an issue that couldn't be resolved. And the judges did a really good job over the weekend facilitating that. And I felt it wasn't intimidating per se for players to be playing in this Magic Fest. But maybe that's kind of what the view is from new players. So it's just interesting to see that there's less players, I believe, than there were a couple of years ago, and I'm wondering why that is the case. And you know, if Arena has brought in these new players, why aren't they coming to the Magic Fest? What's preventing them from coming? Hopefully next year I see some more players. Unfortunately, I think they're cutting back to only one GP or Magic Fest in Sydney, or Australia, sorry, next year, being in Sydney. And that's not until October, so it's quite a while away. There's always been two in Australia for the last few years since I've kind of been going to competitive Magic and going to these Magic Fests. But that's my understanding of it. I know that there's more like players tours and regional tours and all that happening next year. So there are more ways and more avenues to go into these tournament-like structures. But Magic Fest itself having only one next year, um, also again is a bit disheartening, um, for us as Magic players in Australia, especially when it's only in one city, and if it's not your home city, you're going to do a bit of travel for it. Australia's quite a big country, so yeah, it's a bit sad to only have one next year and having it so late in the year as well, about 9 months away, um, or no wait, more than 9 months, 10 or 11 months away now, for it to happen. So yeah, anyways, but what can we do? Not much we can really do about that, apart from maybe letting Channel 5 know that we want some more Magic Fest, but maybe they made that decision because there weren't as many players coming to Magic Fest throughout both Magic Fest in Australia throughout the year. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on what's been happening in the Magic world. Theros Beyond Death has started previews, and it will start next week officially with more previews on a daily basis. But we have got to see what the mechanics are. So we've got Devotion returning, we got Constellation returning. So Devotion is obviously having the symbol of the mana. So let's say green, if you have 3 green symbols in your card on the battlefield, a permanent, then your Devotion to green is 3. So that has returned. Constellation is whenever you play a enchantment, something triggers, and that was shown to have been popular in the past, and I like that kind of mechanic. It was quite a good mechanic back in Theros, and Devotion as well is a nice mechanic. And then we have a new one with Escape, where you can return, and I believe it's any card type. From the video that I saw, return a card back from the graveyard and play it for its escape cost. It's kind of like flashback, but you can reoccur it. So if it dies again or it gets used for its escape cost, you don't exile it after it gets played. It goes back into the graveyard. The cost usually incurs exiling cards from your graveyard, as well as paying mana for it. But I think that's quite a strong mechanic, and a pretty interesting mechanic. So I'm really excited to see what cards do have escape. I feel like the new Elspeth, which has escape mechanic, the Planeswalker, is going to be very strong in Standard, and I think it's going to be really good in Sealed, obviously. But just bringing back a Planeswalker from the graveyard is just crazy. It probably means that you don't have to play as many copies of Elspeth if she didn't have that mechanic attached to her. And then finally we got Sagas returning, which is really cool. I like Sagas. I think they're a really cool kind of card type. So they're returning for Theros. So possibly may have a chat about those new cards coming out during previous season. I'm not sure if that's something that I can kind of do on a daily basis. Might have to pick and choose the best cards during the week. But it's exciting to get a new set. Always exciting to see new cards. And Theros seems to be looking like it's going to be a fun set. And it could be a strong set. I think Escape mechanic is quite strong in itself, in its own right. So, yeah, really interested to see what previews come up over the next few weeks. And then beyond that, next year, hopefully growing a channel. If you're listening, just kind of share these videos with people that might be interested in learning about Pioneer, or want to have a bit of commentary about the Pioneer format. Be really appreciated. Wanting to try and grow this channel throughout 2020. So, yeah. Anyways, all that being said, I guess everything on the stack has resolved. And good games, everyone.